welcome to On Air with B&B.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm Bethany. And today we have a special guest with us, Parker. And we are two mental health therapists with real talk and mental health tips that matter. Today we are going to be talking about school and social balance and the importance of that, how to do it, maybe some questions that you've been asking yourself, or advice you can give parents if you're a provider or a teacher, or just, a coach or babysitter or whatever. But we just kind of really wanted to touch on this, me especially, because I have a child, and this is always something like I'm talking about in my own home with our therapist. Parents are often, especially today, they are always, just even when scheduling, like my kid has so many things to do. Like they have tutoring, they have soccer, they have clubs for after school, they have so much homework. How are we going to fit therapy in? Or now they have therapy, now they have social skills groups. I mean, it just seems to be like a never ending
keep on adding to the plate.
Right, exactly.
More scheduled stuff.
And I always say to like people, I mean, I'm almost 45, and I say, I don't remember us having this many things after school,
Right.
Or on the weekends, when I was a kid. And I do think society in general has gotten to a point where, me included as a parent, feels like our kids have to be planning for college like already when they're in sixth grade, and like we got to get them started in sports right away and all of these things. And I think also just we're also trying to keep them off of devices, if I'm being fair, because there's not as much outdoor play, I think, as was happening once upon a time either. Right. So that's what we wanted to touch on today, kind of like conversations that we have with our clients about how to help your family create this balance.
Yeah. How to create it, what could it look like, giving some suggestions, and then also kind of like a little bit on like how we can implement it into our daily life, right? And so, yes, I've had a lot of parents, like even in family sessions or like in parent only sessions. I've had parents like email me like, hey, can we set up an appointment to really talk about, I think my child has so much going on right now. Like, how can I help them as the parent? And so it's really interesting because, I feel like they're really stressed out. And I'm sitting here, if I'm going to be honest, and I'm looking at it. I'm just sitting here reading the email or just like listening to them talk. And I'm like, okay, Britt, well, what can we say right now? And it's like, should we just address the elephant in the room, whether it's acknowledged or not? And so I do one of two things. It's kind of like, one, acknowledge and validate. Yes, like anyone, especially like a child or an adolescent, when they have so many things back to back scheduled in no breaks, because breaks are productive too. Breaks are rest, breaks are recharging yourself, breaks are equivalent to like resetting, right? And it's imperative for our own mental, emotional well being overall. And so, if the child just keep going as soon as their eyes like open, what kind of narrative are we really setting? And of course, with all of those expectations and activities, of course, they're going to be stressed. I feel like anybody would, right? And then the second thing that I do is just kind of like sitting back, and it's like the parents are like asking me as the clinician, what strategies do I have to really support my client, their child? And I always say, well, before we talk about strategies, right? Because strategies are more for coping, essentially. Like I think they were referring to like coping strategies, which in turn just means whenever I'm having a moment, I'm going to implement my coping strategy that's effective and efficient for me so that I can like re-regulate myself, right? It just promotes emotional regulation. It does not get rid of what? The trigger. And so I really do want to talk about that because the trigger here really is just, oh my gosh, all of these different things like task after task after task. And, I sit with the parents and I'm like, well, who co signed off of the schedule? Who put the kids in bands and then Spanish and then soccer at night? You know what I mean? So we have to kind of like sit and reprioritize, what is important for your child right now, and what does that look like? What's
Absolutely.
important to you?
I think I've definitely seen, an increase. I mean, we've all seen an increase in anxiety in our children
Mm-hmm.
over the past decade.
Yeah.
Um, why that is, I mean, I don't really know for sure, can't say for sure if it's
There's so many
social
factors.
media, if it's just exposure to, um, you know, growing up so quickly.
Well, different environmental factors, right? Like if you really look at the research, like since COVID in 2020, a lot of the ways that we communicate as a people, as a community, as a world, if you will, it has completely changed. We are now more on like a virtual capacity, and we're not just talking about the texting and the calling and the FaceTime and the video chats. We're talking about it's now even promoted and even more so common even in the work field. So a lot of meetings are being
mm-hmm.
conducted virtually. Even our field, since COVID, there has been a huge shift in telehealth and what that looks like. And now it's like universally accepted almost, right? Here in our country. Pre COVID, do you remember how hard it was?
Well, you weren't
It
allowed to
wasn't
do
even,
it
yeah,
unless
like
I
there
think
was
you
like
were certified
stipulations.
or.
Yeah, there were stipulations and things of that nature that kind of like stopped it. And now it's just, there's like a whole new world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing it not just with technological advancements, but we're also seeing it as our society changes and how they embrace these different advances and implement it in our daily lives. I mean, I have clients who are in fourth and fifth grade and they have school iPads and laptops and things of that nature, like devices that they utilize in school. So yes, the environment, whether we're talking about academics, environmental, socio, like the social environments and expectations, it's so different these
It
days.
really is. And like I was saying, I think, we've seen a lot of increase in anxiety. And I can speak like for my own child. We really had to take a step back because she was going to school and school was going great. And she went to a school, like I know everybody's schooling looks a little bit different, whether you're homeschooled, virtual school, in person, private, public,
Correct.
charter, a farm, or whatever. It looks different. But what I can say is the school that my child was a great school, and they're very heavy on like academic success. That's like, and they would assign a lot of homework. And I remember when she was younger, she would get, like a packet, like, or
Mm-hmm.
all of her homework earlier in the week. And, you could just get it done at your leisure and turn it in by Friday. That worked well for us with balancing, school and social balance and extracurriculars and all of that, because there would be some nights that she would have a big, she would go right from school to dance and, be there until 8 o'clock at night. And so we wouldn't do homework that night. You know what I mean? That would be a night we would just come home, have dinner, bath, bed, and that worked really well. As she got into the older primary grades, they did things a little bit different for her at her school. So they were assigning homework each night, and then she had to turn it in the following morning. And if you didn't, there was a homework grade, and the homework grade affected your final grade. And she was already a child who's with a predisposition to anxiety and perfectionism and all of that. So it was very important to her to, do well and have this done. And on the nights that she would have like a lot of her dance classes in the same night, we weren't getting home until, like I said, 8 o'clock, 8:30. It's like, then you got to like wind down. Now we got to like have dinner still. Then we have to sit down and do a couple hours of homework. Then we still have to take a shower and like get our things ready for the next morning. I mean, there were some nights she was getting to bed at 11 o'clock at night, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and then doing it all over again. And she did manage it, but the wheels started falling off after a while. It's not sustainable. And my husband and I had to sit down and say, like, do we take like some of her dance classes off? And then she, of course, no, no, I love it. That's what brings me happiness. That's what brings me joy. As a parent, you're like, I don't want to take that away, but like school's really important. So we kept trying to find things that would work to find that balance. And for our family, we decided to go to a different school that had a different structural approach so that she didn't have as they're more of a like, you only have homework if you don't get your work done in school. And that might not be for everyone, but because our child, like the extracurricular part was really important for her and brought her so much joy, we needed to find a balance so she wasn't going to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and waking up at 6 a.m. every day, day after day after day, and having the anxiety of like, I never have enough time, the pressure building. And that really worked for us. And now we're kind of just taking things like year by year, like, let's see how this year goes, and being open to the fact that we might change it the next year, that we don't always have to like have like a set plan of what like our child's academic life or extracurricular life or social life or whatever is going to be. We can take it like year by year, and that sometimes makes it more manageable.
Right, absolutely. And so I hear, so one example that Bethany was sharing is just one accommodation that we could do as far as compromising to find that balance is if you have the opportunity, and if it works for your family, looking at is the school requirements or the school policies or
Right for my
expectations a
child
good fit for my
and
child?
our family, because that's another thing. Like, depending on your family dynamics and like where you work, what times you work, if there's a busing system, like not all families are able to go to those schools because they're like, we need a bus to take our child to school. I have to be at work at 7 a.m., and they don't have a bus. So, and maybe you don't have friends that you can carpool with, but you do. I would definitely advise you to, I always say, like, turning over like every rock, like leave no rock unturned, do the research, find out. Don't just say, oh, well, my mom friend or, told me this or that. Like, actually call around and find out. And that, because that's what we did. We called around, we set up interviews with schools, weighed our options, looked at our work schedules. What could we do? Where could we pull back? Where could she pull back? We did take her out of like a couple of her dance classes too, again, and we explained to her that we could always add them back, but like, let's see how this goes. You have to be willing to have those conversations, and really, really look into everything and find the best possible structured situation for your family dynamics. Because if not, you keep trying to push your child into what you think they're supposed to do with school and extracurricular, and you're just going to get a kid who's burnt out by the time they're 12 years old.
Right. Absolutely.
If not sooner.
Right.
My child was a little bit younger than that. She was 9 when this started happening.
Actually, while we're talking about this, another example, another real life example that happened just a few days ago in one of my groups. We had a parent group for our social skills group. And some of the moms were saying, like, Britt, like, we're always getting invited to these birthday
Oh,
parties.
yes, the birthday parties.
Right? We're always getting invited to
That we
birthday
feel like we
parties
have to
that
go
we have
to.
to go to, especially because, like, an added layer for them is that their particular school dynamic, it's a private school and it's so small and it's so interconnected. And so if the child doesn't go to said birthday party, then the next day it's like, well, you didn't go to my birthday party, like what's going on, because it's such a small private school where everyone knows everyone and where the parents are highly involved and things of that nature as well. And so it's like, well, Britt, like, what do I do in these situations? Right? Like, how do we choose these balance? Because it's like, if we go to all, we have no free time,
None.
no free weekends or anything of that nature. And so, what I recommended is just,
And no money because you have to buy all these
right,
birthday gifts.
right. And it's hard. So, it's like, how do we manage, the idea of rest by balancing our schedule versus saying yes to everything
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And that kind of ties into like boundaries. And so I did, say, hey, this is like a really hard situation. And for someone who doesn't have a child who's in private school, I never like lived it, but I can imagine, as far as like my own friend groups, right? And it's like, hey, Bray, I want you to go to Spain with me for my birthday in June, and then my other best friend's birthday's in July, and she's like, we're gonna go to Italy, and I'm just sitting
I
here
don't
like,
know where they
how can
work, but if
but
you could
for
sign me up.
but for me, I'm sitting here like, oh my goodness, like how do I manage this balance, right? Remember, balance isn't just like scheduling, but it can also show up like with your finances, balance with your relationships and things of that nature. But this is why it's so important. This is why it matters to instill balance at such a young age, right? Because it does show up with my example, and that's a true example, guys, shockingly enough. And I had to pick, and I had to say, hey, I think right now I appreciate the invitation. This is kind of what I recommended to the parents as well in the parent group, like the moms. You can always reach out to the parents. In my case, I had to reach out to my friends. And you can always say to the parents, like, hey, thank you so much. We've had so much going on recently, right? And the mom, you as a mom or as a parent, you could just pick, like, okay, you're going to go to these birthday parties because these are like your true, like your
Mm-hmm.
best of best friends, right? And then maybe for the other birthday parties, kind of looking at it. And if it's a lot, what you could do is just, hey, I am so sorry we're not going to make it. We just have so much on our plate right now. But one of these weeks, or summer is around the corner, how about we schedule a play date?
I've done that actually, where we've missed birthday
Mm-hmm.
parties because we weren't, and it wasn't just because we're, you know, like didn't want to go. It like we couldn't because again, there's always something.
Yes.
And then we just scheduled. I remember I think Piper was in like first grade, and we went and met up with the girl and her mom whose birthday it was at an ice cream shop like the next week or two.
Yeah.
And the girls had ice cream together and they got one-on-one time that they wouldn't have gotten at the birthday party.
Right.
You
You
know
could
what I
exchange
mean?
gifts then as
And
well.
she
And
did. Piper brought the gift,
yeah.
and it was really nice. And it was literally like a half an hour to 45 minutes that we were there.
Yeah.
So much easier. So just helping and showing. I think we have to model this for our kids too. So I know as parents, like it's hard to like put ourselves first, and it's hard to find time for self care for ourselves, and like meet up with our friends, or go
Show up for
on
yourself.
dates with our
Yeah.
partner, or just go to a class, maybe that we want to take for ourselves. But I think just like saying, like in front of them, like, gosh, like, I really want to go to this, but I'm also so tired this week. I think I'm going to have to tell my friend, let's like, can we do a rain check, like, and like catch up another time. And when they see you setting those social boundaries, or work boundaries, maybe not picking up another project at work or another client or another conference, or, I mean, should I go on?
I feel
When
attacked.
that's fine. I'll attack you all day. But when we actually verbalize that out loud in front of our kids, they're always watching. I think I've said this before in other videos that we've done, to see like what do my parents do, because that's how we learn what to do, and that it's going to be okay. And I think it's good to show them how to set boundaries and have that balance between work and fun and rest and all of those things.
No,
you know
absolutely. So yeah, kids do mirror their parents, and a lot of the idea and the concept of balance is a learned behavior, because naturally balance has to be very intentional, and you have to put forth effort to it. it's really hard to sit and rest and to recharge, especially if you have this productive mindset of, I have to keep doing this, or, my kid needs social experiences. So I have to like say yes to all of these parties and get togethers and hangouts. Maybe you have a older teenager, another true story of a recent client, and they're like, oh, well, I'm a senior in high school. And so our first spring break together, this is our last spring break in high school, and we're gonna go on a trip together. And meanwhile, it's like, you as the parent, you're like, no, we're gonna have family
Mm-hmm.
time during this like spring break. How do you navigate that as a parent? Now you have a 17-year-old going to be 18 in a few weeks post spring break, mind you. Where in the States, that's a legal adult as 18. So how do you navigate, for our parents who maybe are tuning in and having like a older teenager who's transitioning into a young adult?
Mm-hmm.
You're still parents. You're still going to be involved when they're 18. Like, it's a lot, whether they go to trade school, get a new job, go to college, all of the things, right? So how how do you guys navigate that, right? So when that happened, I sat down with the parents and I did let them know, how much. I asked them, like, how much control do you authentically have right now?
What'd they say?
In theory, none, right? I mean, their son is like twice their size.
But
And it's
does he
like,
have money?
no.
Okay, because
Well,
see,
he has
that's
a
my, I'm always like,
well,
I have
I
the
lied.
control
I lied.
because your butt can't pay for this.
Right. Well, I lied. He has a part-time job, right? He has a part-time job. So sorry, he has a part-time job, but to fund his life, no. To fund the trip, yes.
Okay.
If that makes more sense. So I just wanted to clarify that. Yes, no, he has a part-time job, so he does have income, and he is very responsible in totality to describe this particular child. And so mom and dad came in because they were offended, they were disappointed, they were
That he
hurt.
wanted to go on a trip with his friends instead
Instead
of
of
with
him,
them.
yes. And they were like, well, what can we do? Like, what should we do? And I said, well, you do have to like look at how much control you genuinely have in this situation. And secondly, if you wanted to, if you feel like this is something that is like disrespectful, I always encourage like a conversation, right? So just sitting down with the child and just saying like, hey, this is how we feel, you know
Mm-hmm.
we feel like this because. And so an example of this could just be like, you know hey Billy, I really wanted you to come with dad and I on spring break. We do this every single year. It feels like it's a family tradition for us. We do understand you're getting older. I just wanted to let you know that this is how we feel. If this is something that you truly want to do, um, we do have some rules because legally you're still a child, right? But I want you to know that, you know, moving forward, we would like a little bit more heads up as far as like planning and things of that nature, because we feel like it's unfair that we planned a trip thinking that you were going to come and now you're choosing not to. And we want to kind of set this boundary for the future when you are an adult and you do have the opportunity to make your own choices,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because here's the thing, in a couple of weeks, Billy is about to be 18. So you do have to think of these things very differently. And parenting does look different when you're parenting a toddler, someone who's around like a preteen age, teenagers, older adult, like older adolescents, if you will, and then young adults,
Yeah.
right? So parenting does evolve and it does change. So just be mindful of that. But, again, no matter what we do, just finding this balance, it really could look different in so many different situations.
And it kind of helps having these conversations and including them instead of telling them like, absolutely not, this is what we're not going to do unless it's something dangerous. Like, I mean, that's different. And the dynamics are different. Like, are we
Yeah.
wanting to go on a trip? Like, I don't know, in the state? Are we
Yeah.
wanting to go on a trip across the country? Are we wanting
Right.
to go on a trip in
Everything is on a
another
reasonable
country? I mean, yes,
list, please.
there have to be lines, right? Okay, with what
Yeah.
we're comfortable
Billy was
with.
going to Orlando, which for
Okay, which is
reference is
only
like
like 2
2 hours
hours from
away.
here.
Yeah.
But I want to point that out, but I think like including them so that they feel like they're part of the decision making process so that they're learning how to make decisions on their own and feeling capable and comfortable and confident in their decision making when they leave the nest, so to speak, is really important. And I think we can start doing that, like, even with like extracurriculars. Like, what if they want to do two? Okay. And, you know, you don't have either like the funds to like have your child do two, or you don't have the time to bring them to two. Maybe you have other children who are in extracurriculars and you have to, Tuesdays are for your younger child, so you're going to have to, stay home that day, or you're going to have to come with that day because you're not driving yet and I can't be in two places at once. um you know i, I only have one child, so I I don't deal with that, but I know a lot of parents that do. I remember talking to one mom one year and she was just like, "Oh well, like they're just going to have to pick one." But they need to be part, I think, of picking the one so that they feel like they're getting that practice to
Make
make
choices,
choices, make decisions, weigh their options,
learning compromise, like what
right. You might even say, like, do like a pros and cons list to each one, and how it's going to be affect your school balance. Like, for example, if it's one where you're going to be there right from after school all the way into the evening and you have homework due the next morning, maybe that's not the one for you. Maybe you should do the other one that gives you have a break in between school and the extracurricular activity, or it ends earlier that night. Just kind of helping them with like weighing all of those things when they're learning how to make decisions and learning how to balance things.
yeah. No, I think that's really, really important because when we are able to balance, we are really our best self. When we're unbalanced, it really does promote dysregulation. It really does promote burnout. It promotes compassion fatigue. I mean, there's so many different things here. Some like practical strategies for parents in order to promote balance and things of that nature. Some additional ones that we haven't talked about just yet is maybe like a visual schedule,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be for like younger kiddos, kind of like PECS, which is like picture exchange communication. You have a picture, you have it kind of like in chronological order of the way that you want them to complete each task. For older kiddos or even our older like teenagers, even they can do planners, they can do calendars, they can make lists. So I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important. Parents always ask me, hey, like how can I support this, right? Without nagging or without being a helicopter parent. I always recommend, you could do check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Billy, just checking in on, how this week is feeling for you, right? I'm not checking in to see if you did X, Y, and Z. That's your responsibility. I'm not checking to see, did you check the planner or the calendar, or did you check your list? Reason being, promoting that and reminders like that really do enforce dependency, and we don't want to do that, right? So all we could do really is just, hey, how are you feeling this week? How's this week going, right? Is there anything that I can do to support you this week,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes you can just ask them
Yeah.
what they need.
And sometimes they'll blow you off and sometimes they'll ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to like say that. Another thing too is just, we kind of highlighted earlier, but the prioritizing things together. So like working together as a team to be supportive, but also kind of like what Bethany was saying, like allowing the child or the children to have a voice within their choice, and to just say like, hey mom, I know that I have to pick between soccer and basketball. I really do like basketball. Even though I get home a little bit later, it's only 2 days a week rather than 4 days a
Mm-hmm.
week, and I'm willing to like make that,
Yeah.
and so, and then you're putting the responsibility on the child as well. right? When you're allowing the child the opportunity, the autonomy to make a choice,
Right.
right? Um, Another one too that I personally love, I do this. I schedule my free time. I know it sounds crazy. Hold on. I feel it. So I felt her energy.
That was
But
nothing.
I
It was
I
Parker.
schedule, I do schedule my free time. But what this looks like, it's like very intentional. So sometimes I will turn off my phone. Um, Sometimes I will just, be in my room, put on a show, and like my phone is and my laptop is outside of my room, right? Sometimes I schedule free time and I'm just going to go sit outside and enjoy some fresh air or go to the beach by myself or take my dog for a walk. But I'm kind of like disconnecting myself from like interactions with others, right? Sometimes I journal, sometimes I meditate, sometimes I'll independently do yoga, or I'll allow like a YouTube channel person to guide me on the YouTube video on some guided meditation or guided yoga. So but it is important that I schedule it. The reason that I have to schedule it is because like we are so busy.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we do balance things, like just because you're balanced does not mean you're not busy.
Yeah,
So I do
definitely.
want to highlight that. And so it's just we prioritize our time and we are very organized
Mm-hmm.
with our time and also selective too. And so, you know, blocking out or scheduling downtime can be very intentional for rest. For the children, it can look like intentional play. They know what they can look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a reward. It's a motivator, right? It's like, don't worry, like you're not working forever, Britt. Like you do have a break, right? And so it's something that they can really look forward to. And then the last thing is just really promoting fixed mindset and that not everything has to be rigid and it is okay to embrace change and that,
Do you
even
mean
though,
growth mindset?
yes, sorry, growth mindset, flexible mindset, sorry. So growth mindset, yes. So we want to grow, right? And we want to be open to like different changes and we want to be flexible. And we want to like embrace changes because even though change can be hard and even though compromise can be non-preferred because compromise typically means giving up something.
And I kind of want to like just like to wrap up this video, like
Yeah.
touch on what you're saying right there,
Yeah.
and that I think it's okay to teach our children that not all the time, like we don't want them flaking out and canceling things all the time, but like if it's just like a really rough day or a rough week, saying, you know what, I'm gonna like sit this one out, and like just making sure that they're being responsible and letting like whoever they're canceling on, whether it be, a practice or a social interaction, or maybe they just need a mental health day for school,
Yeah.
like letting the school know, letting the coach know, letting the friend know, so that we're being, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, responsible, but considerate. Considerate's the word I'm looking for, right? Teaching them consideration. Like it's okay to say, you know what, I really just can't do it today and I need to take this time for myself, but within reason. Like it's not going to be every week we need a mental health day,
Right.
And now we have 9 absences from school and we've missed practice. I mean, because then that's a whole nother conversation. Like maybe this is too much for you
Yeah.
if we're feeling the need to cancel that often, right? But like really like talking to them about how it is okay once in a blue moon to say like, I just need this time for myself, and I know I made this plan or I have this commitment, but I don't do this often, so they'll understand, as long as I'm being responsible and considerate and letting people know in a timely manner,
Right.
so that they're not expecting me to be there.
No, absolutely. And I think, this is just such a good video because balance is important. And so many people just don't recognize, right?
Right.
And take on too much or do too much for the idea or the concept of, oh, like, I'm just gonna put my child in tutoring in like a different language class and then like an actually like a physical activity. And it's like, where's the break?
Right.
Right? Like, what are we really teaching our child when we overschedule them like that? And so, just recognizing all of these things, I think, in this video is super important. So, before we really wrap up, though, I just wanted to say I know Parker was very uneventful today. This is him at baseline, so no shocker there. But we do want to invite everyone in our audience and our viewers to just like leave a comment or to reach out to us and just let us know what special guests you guys would be interested in having on our little podcast here. So, whether it's like child specialist or a school psychologist or a school counselor or, other types of therapists, whatever it is that you guys feel like would be helpful, or even psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, there's so many other professionals that we can network with and have on here for
different topics that you guys are interested in hearing about.
No, absolutely. So
we're open to ideas.
Yes. So thank you so much for hanging out with us on Air with B&B. Remember that your mental health matters, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye. I'm looking for